Now, here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hello and welcome to Pork Chops and Applesauce. I'm Christopher Knight. Now, you may be wondering why a guy who has grown up in Los Angeles his entire life and still lives here and has nothing to do with the agricultural industry save for being, an experienced eater of the agricultural product, why in the world I would be talking about the agricultural industry. Now, although best known as an actor and for my role as Peter Brady in The Brady Bunch, I have since enjoyed a long career in the high-tech industry. And though I'm currently a partner and serve as the face of the brand Christopher Knight Home, I have always been drawn to science and technology. Throughout my life, I've always been fascinated with how things work and understanding the science behind it. One of my passions is food and cooking.
Hey, only Mark.
Before I was first asked to play the role of veterinarian Dr. Copper in the film Ivy League Farmer, I didn't have much insight into the animal ag industry, nor did I give it much thought. But once we started shooting, and I got to meet the many people from the animal agricultural business serving on the movie as technical consultants, that old how and why in me got stimulated. With a heightened sense of curiosity, I began a quest for the truths in food production. Where does our food come from, and what's really in it? Since that time, I have been fortunate enough to attend the last two NutriBlend customer reward trips, and that's where I had the opportunity to seek even deeper knowledge from the many food industry insiders in attendance. I learned that perhaps what I've always assumed to be true about food production may not be correct. I was frankly surprised to learn that the animal agriculture only accounted for 3% of our CO2 emissions. What astonished me was that the rate at which the industry has continued to lower those emissions over time. The dairy industry has decreased the carbon footprint of a gallon of milk by 63% since 1944. One cow produces as much milk today as 5 cows did back in 1944. In addition to reducing CO2, it now takes 34% less land and 14% less water to produce 1 pound of beef than it did in 1977. This is according to a Washington State University study, a study that also found that since 1977, livestock production advances have resulted in 13% more beef with 13% fewer cows. I had no idea. So I've decided to study and learn for myself what is true and what is misunderstood or misbelieved. I have decided to share my discoveries in a series called Pork Chops and Applesauce. I hope you'll enjoy learning along with me.
Now, here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hello and welcome to Pork Chops and Applesauce. I'm Christopher Knight. Now, you may be wondering why a guy who has grown up in Los Angeles his entire life and still lives here and has nothing to do with the agricultural industry save for being, an experienced eater of the agricultural product, why in the world I would be talking about the agricultural industry. Now, although best known as an actor and for my role as Peter Brady in The Brady Bunch, I have since enjoyed a long career in the high-tech industry. And though I'm currently a partner and serve as the face of the brand Christopher Knight Home, I have always been drawn to science and technology. Throughout my life, I've always been fascinated with how things work and understanding the science behind it. One of my passions is food and cooking.
Hey, only Mark.
In filming the movie Ivy League Farmer, there were several lines in the movie about hunger that caught my attention. One line in particular said that 9 million people will die this year from starvation and that 7 million of those will be children. When I asked if that was true or made up for the movie, they informed me that it was unfortunately true. I decided that I needed to learn more. What I discovered is that hunger kills more people worldwide than AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis combined. One of the first things that struck me in my quest to learn about the American farmer and the food he produces is the amount of science and technology now used to feed America and the world. It's uplifting and exciting to see what farmers, ranchers, and animal agriculture workers are doing to make a difference in this hungry world. We need to applaud their efforts and encourage them to keep up the work they're doing because according to the United Nations, in 50 years, we are going to need 70% more food to meet the world's growing population needs. And 70% of that food is estimated will have to come from efficiency, enhancing technology, and science. That's this week's Pork Chops and Applesauce. I'm Christopher Knight.
Now, here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hi, I'm Christopher Knight, and welcome to this edition of Pork Chops and Applesauce. As is well known, in California, environmental issues are felt very strongly, and commensurate with this sentiment, environmental protections hold considerable sway. And growing up in California, I was aware of environmental concerns from the very earliest childhood. Some from outside our state might say that we are programmed to be environmental protectionists. I like to think, though, that we are raised to be sensitive to environmental degradation. At this point, it's not just us Californians who are aware that CO2 is a greenhouse gas and a principal cause of global warming. Now, I had been led to believe that farming, particularly animal agriculture, was a leading cause of CO2 emissions. The common thought is, if we were to all go vegetarian or at least adopt a practice of meatless Mondays, we could significantly reduce greenhouse gas. After spending time with organizations like NutriBlend, Elanco, and Diamond V, I've learned that perhaps I should consider digging a little deeper. Study the facts. In my research, I discovered that if the entire US population adopted meatless Mondays, that would only reduce the total US carbon footprint by less than 0.5%. It would take 3 meatless days to reduce our carbon footprint by 1%. And going totally vegetarian all 7 days only lowers our carbon footprint by a bit under 3%. It's not that 3% isn't scientifically significant. In this context, it's arguable, but the change required is way out of balance for the benefits gained toward lower carbon emissions. Our bodies are built to consume animal protein. Children need the advantage of animal-based protein in their diet for proper development, mentally if not physically. But that's a story for another time. Now, the voices in the plant-based diet movement make it sound like animal-based protein is a major contributor to greenhouse gases. But according to the EPA, animal agriculture accounts for only 3% of all US greenhouse gas. On the other hand, the transportation industry accounts for 26% of our CO2 emissions. So before we exhaust ourselves convincing the masses to stop eating meat to save ourselves from global warming, let's transition out of carbon-based fuel. As hard as that may be, it's far easier than completely ridding our diets of meat, and 9 times more effective. And there you go. It's another edition of Pork Chops and Applesauce. I hope it's been informative.
Now, here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hi, this is Christopher Knight. Now, last year I had the incredible good fortune at a very successful charity event to meet an incredible woman by the name of Dr. Patricia Wolf. As we visited, I learned that Dr. Wolf spends 6 months out of her year living in Haiti. Now, that much time in Haiti has provided Dr. Wolf with an intimate knowledge of the Haitian people and their country. It has also grounded her in the numerous statistics about Haiti and the problems facing its people. Now, you spend any time with Dr. Wolf and you will come away learning a lot more about Haiti and those very problems. I knew Haiti was a poor nation, but through Dr. Wolf, I learned Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And, this is surprising, the most malnourished country in the world. 1 in 14 children in Haiti die before their 5th birthday. 42% of Haitian children suffer from a stunting of physical growth and of brain development due to acute malnutrition. The effects of chronic and acute malnutrition are lifelong. Severe malnutrition suffered in the first 2 years of life result in irreversible physical and mental disabilities and depressed immune systems, and increasing the probability of childhood death. The statistics regarding Haiti are flat out sad. As of 2016, Haiti ranks as the worst country in the world in daily caloric intake per person. 42% of children less than 5 years of age suffer from stunting of growth. Unemployment is now 90% in Haiti, and 80% of Haiti's people live in abject poverty. 59% of the population lives on less than $2 a day. Dr. Wolf is the Executive Director of Meds and Foods for Kids, dedicated to saving the lives of Haiti's malnourished children. Meds and Foods for Kids produces and distributes Medica Mamba, a ready-to-use therapeutic food considered to be the gold standard by the World Health Organization, sometimes called miracle peanut butter. Through people like Dr. Patricia Wolf, there's hope. Of course, as she reminded me, the hope that she can make a difference depends a lot on the help from others. And to this end, she said to me that the animal agricultural industry in the U.S. instills in her the confidence that she can continue to improve the health and prosperity of the Haitian people. She had to explain to me how it was that the animal ag industry gave her hope, as her program wasn't at all based on animal protein. She made clear that she hopes someday all Haitians will be able to afford chicken, beef, pork, and to consume animal-based protein. Until then, the reason the animal agricultural industry gives Dr. Wolf hope is because of the generous financial support those in the animal ag industry have provided her organization. You see, last year, a group from the animal ag industry here in the U.S., led by a company called NutriBlend, donated over $1.4 million to Meds and Foods for Kids. I asked her why she thought they did that. Her simple answer was, because people in the American agricultural business recognize they're in the healthcare business. They care about the health of their land and the environment. They care about the health of their animals. And most importantly, they care about the health of their fellow man. Feeding people is how they contribute. That's this week's Pork Chops and Applesauce. I'm Christopher Knight.
Now, here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hi, I'm Christopher Knight, and this segment of Pork Chops and Applesauce is going to be extraordinarily exciting. Let me ask you a trivia question first. In 1 month, how many eggs does your average hen lay? 5, 15, 27, or 60? The answer is 27 of these little oval babies. The average hen will lay nearly 1 egg per day. That is something I never knew. Several years ago, eggs were a foul topic. They were considered to be an unhealthy food choice. But that noise has since calmed down, and I recently discovered why. Just 1 egg provides 50% of the recommended daily allowance of protein and 100% of iron for developing children. Eggs contain 0 carbs and no sugar. Animal protein is essential for cognitive and physical development, especially in young kids. Children who receive adequate amounts of protein before age 5 have higher IQs and stronger mental development. In the developing world, eggs are the most efficient method to consistently deliver animal protein. Eggs are also the lowest cost protein source there is, and that's something to cluck about. So cluck, cluck, save a buck. My only problem with eggs is which kind to buy when I go to the store, because there are so many kinds. You read all the different labels and it gets confusing. First, you have the age-old size difference with different grades, but that's been around a while and is now pretty self-explanatory. Then you gotta make a choice on brown, white, or sometimes speckled. Well, now we got the new feel-good choices. Organic, cage-free, free-range, farm fresh, and the latest, vegetarian fed diet. And if it's not labeled farm fresh, what the heck is it? These new feel-good choices cost more. Why? Are they better? Are they healthier? Which are best? Looks like I got some research to do. I'll be telling you what I've learned about the chicken and the egg in future episodes of Pork Chops and Applesauce.
Now, here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hi, I'm Christopher Knight, and welcome to Pork Chops and Applesauce. Now, I live in Los Angeles and I work in Hollywood, and I'm constantly around abundance. You know, I live in a larger-than-life world that exudes the American dream. I consider myself to have been very fortunate to have found success as a youngster, and I have continued to be blessed throughout my life. Now, living in a a city and a country that produces so much wealth and prosperity, I think sometimes it's easy to casually consider that, well, all of those that live amongst us live similarly. Sure, there are some people that have bigger houses and more expensive cars, but when it comes to food, certainly everyone has access to more than enough to eat. But appearances can be misleading. There are pockets of populations all over the United States where poverty is so severe that people are going without most everything, including food to eat. Try this one on for size. 1 out of every 5 children in the U.S. are food insecure. That's 20% of our children. For periods of time, the children of these food insecure households can only depend on guaranteed meal while at school. Food insecurity can be found everywhere. In fact, rural areas account for 64% of the counties with the highest food insecurity.
A only Mark.
While filming Ivy League Farmer, I was made aware of a movement called Drive to Feed Kids that is doing something about domestic childhood hunger. Started by NutriBlend, Drive to Feed Kids is a program to bring awareness to the issues of food insecurity and domestic hunger and raise money for local backpack programs. NutriBlend and other feed manufacturers across the U.S. are providing vital resources to those in the local community working to bring nutritious food to school children who would otherwise go hungry over weekends and when out of school. These backpack programs assemble meals and nutritious food into backpacks and distribute them to food insecure children, ensuring they will have food to eat when they are not at school. These backpack programs are largely independent and staffed by community volunteers that simply want to help their kids in their hometowns. Throughout the efforts of Drive to Feed Kids, over 15 million meals have been provided to hungry school children, while another 8 million forecasted to be given out this year. As I have gotten to know the folks in the agricultural industry, I've come to realize that I've not met a harder working or more attentive and kind-hearted group anywhere. It's reassuring knowing that our country's food production is in such capable and compassionate hands. Something I will have to make sure to communicate to all my friends living in the urban jungle. That's this week's Pork Chops and Applesauce. I'm Christopher Knight.
Now, here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Welcome to Pork Chops and Applesauce. I'm Christopher Knight. You know, a little while ago, my wife and I were at a backyard barbecue at a friend's house, and our host, as we were standing around the barbecue, blurted out to me that, hey, you want an all-natural beef kebab? And that got me thinking, all natural, huh? Oh, well, where my curiosity is, my mouth sometimes wanders. And so I then said, what the heck is that? All natural. And he said, well, natural, they're healthier, they're better for you. At this point now, Kara's tugging on my arm, you know, and it's not that I was challenging him at all, you know, I'm just curious, that's the way I am. And I asked him, what did he mean by them being healthier or better for me? What exactly about them being natural was healthier for me? And he just stares at me and he puts in air quotes, natural. Well, being a believer that all meat is kind of natural, I wasn't getting the answer I was looking for. And clearly he had no idea why they were healthier. So with Kara tugging on my arms, I left it at that. At that time, the beef kebabs were coming off the grill and they were smelling good. And I told my friend, you know, those all-natural beef kebabs, they smell just as good as the unnatural beef kebabs. I asked for one, I thanked him, and like a good guest, I asked no more questions. Now that brief encounter did cause me to wonder what the true answer really was. So it was time to do some research and to understand what it means for meat to be considered natural. I thought the best place to start would be the USDA website, looking up the definition of natural meat. What I was surprised to learn was that the term natural is defined by how your animal is processed and has nothing at all to do with how the animal was raised. Now, wouldn't all steaks, ribs, hamburgers, roasts fit that definition? The label natural doesn't seem to be a bad thing, it just doesn't seem to mean much. Consumer Reports found that 2/3 of consumers in the US are misled by the natural label on meat. with more than 90% expecting it to mean much more than it does. The next time you see the term natural in the grocery store, don't be fooled. And if you're ever at a party and someone offers you an all-natural beef kebab, simply say thank you. We'll see you next week on Pork Chops and Applesauce.
Now, here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hi, I'm Christopher Knight, and this is Pork Chops and Applesauce. My wife Kara works out all the time. Not that long ago, she was actually a fitness competitor. In fact, she won the title of Miss Fitness in 2007. And though she is no longer competing, Kara is still watching what she eats and staying fit. And her dedication reminds me that though I was once more dedicated to the gym, watching what I eat is and will always be very important, because after a lifetime of witnessing the balance between diet and my health, I know that nothing good done in a gym or in life can overcome eating badly. When I met Kara, she was a consumer of organic foods. Kara and I were both vested in eating healthy, yet we both came down on different sides of organic food. I'm skeptical by nature and wary of sales and marketing of everything. To Kara, organic food was healthier. To me, it was a gimmick and cost more, so not worth it. Kara didn't really know how organic was better and wasn't really sure if it was. Unless she could be satisfied inorganic wasn't bad for her, she'd have to stay on the organic train. Though I suspected organic and inorganic were nutritionally similar and that there was nothing unhealthy about inorganic foods, I really hadn't done any research. To arrive at a satisfactory conclusion, we agreed we needed more information. In a highly regarded 2012 Stanford University School of Medicine report on the advantages of organic meat and produce, the most comprehensive study to date, it's a review of 4 decades of research, concluded organic food being no more nutritious than conventional. And according to the National Dairy Council Organic Milk Fact, there is no nutritional difference between milk labeled organic and milk produced conventionally. As for credible studies suggesting eating meats and vegetables produced using standard farming practices was harmful to human beings, they were nowhere to be found. So now that we've done the research on organic, we both see other political reasons perhaps for supporting organic farming, but not for reasons of personal health and nutrition. So I'm loading up on conventional produce, and Kara's no longer bringing home organic meat, eggs, and milk. And neither of us are listening to our friends who are completely convinced, but not sure how, organic foods are cleaner and more nutritious. Until organic reaches price parity with conventional food, we're buying conventional. Regardless of your choice, however, feel safe that you've made a healthy choice. We'll see you next week on Pork Chops and Applesauce.
Here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hi, I'm Christopher Knight. By now, many of you know that I have a keen interest in food and food preparation. I had taken to others calling me a foodie until I discovered that the top definition of foodie in the Urban Dictionary was someone with no actual interest or hobby. Not wanting to be defined by trolls, I've settled on this. I'm a food enthusiast. Kara and I travel quite a bit, and when we do, we enjoy going to restaurants. But when we're home, we mostly eat in. What better way to do that than sizzle up a few steaks? The protein course of our meal alone was pushing $50. By the time you add salad, grilled veggies, and baked potatoes, the meal was easily $60. Well, our discussion evolved into the perception versus reality of cost, and how, because of inflation, everything seemed to cost so much more these days. I decided to use 1950 as my benchmark date. In 1950, food accounted for 32% of household income. In 2009, that number had dropped to 6% in the US. How does that compare to transportation? During that same time frame, transportation costs doubled as a percentage of income. In 1950, transportation took 11% of our paychecks, and today it takes 22%. As much as food costs today eat up, it's a deal. On par with housing and transportation and about everything else, food could be far more expensive, if not for the productivity of modern farming and the efforts of today's American farmers. I'd already learned from previous research that farmers provide a safer food supply than ever before, have significantly reduced their carbon footprint while increasing production, and have made enormous strides in increased animal comfort. And now I've learned they've done all this at incredible savings to you and me, the consumer. God bless our farmers. I'll see you next week on Pork Chops and Applesauce.
Here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Welcome to Pork Chops and Applesauce. I'm Christopher Knight. A friend recently sent me a YouTube video of Jimmy Kimmel asking folks what GMOs were. As you can imagine, it was hysterical because most folks didn't have any idea what GMO even stood for, yet they stood adamantly opposed to them. Now, GMO, genetically modified organisms, are organisms whose genetic material has been genetically changed using engineering techniques. They have been in existence since the early 1980s, where they were initially used in the advancement of medical science and the safe production of medicines such as insulin. As for food crops, like corn and wheat, GMO plants, or GM seeds, as they're sometimes called, have been used by farmers for approximately 20 years. Truth is, plants and their plant seed offspring have been modified through traditional plant breeding techniques for hundreds of years. Fruits like today's seedless watermelon and bananas are significantly different than earlier versions of these fruits. You name the fruit or vegetable, from potatoes and pumpkins to oranges and strawberries, today's version is larger and more plentiful than its ancestor from 300 years ago. GMO seeds have been tested more than any other crop in the history of agriculture, with no evidence of harm to humans, animals, or the environment. In fact, some GMO crops are purposely designed to benefit the environment by using water more efficiently or lessening the need of fertilizer. Hundreds of independent scientists and researchers have reviewed the data globally, and all have concluded that the consumption of GMO food is perfectly safe. The organizations reaching this conclusion include the American Medical Association, the Royal Society of Medicine, the World Health Organization, and the National Academy of Sciences. The raging debate over GMO food is very complex. All across the blogosphere, there are GMO opponents voicing varied concerns and making negative complaints about the health of eating GMO foods. But if you drill down, you'll find no fact-based scientific evidence supporting these claims. I always think it's good to put things into perspective. And toward that aim, it's important to ask, why are we having a GMO debate in the first place? Why are we genetically modifying food? The answer is twofold. First and foremost, in the next 35 years, we're going to have to figure out how to produce 70% more food to feed our world's growing population. The equation is staggeringly unbelievable, and getting there is uncertain. But if we don't figure it out, hundreds of millions of people will starve in a hunger and starvation epidemic, the likes of which have never been witnessed in any animal species, let alone human. If we allow human populations to grow, there exists an obligation to feed them. Second, GMO crops promise to minimize environmental damage associated with farming. Too often, more farmland means clearing more natural habitats like rainforests and damming up rivers, draining wetlands. GMO crops can help farmers make the most of existing farmland, allowing them to produce more using less land, less fertilizer, less insecticide, and less water. Over the last 20 years, 1 billion acres of GMO crops have been grown and consumed without a single instance of harm to human health. According to our leading health organizations who've done the scientific research and conducted the health studies, GMOs are safe to consume. As the GMO debate rages on, remember that we've all been living ever more healthy and longer lives. And for more than 20 years, we've all been eating GMOs. We're all proof that GMOs are safe. This is Christopher Knight for Pork Chops and Applesauce.
Here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hi, this is Christopher Knight, and this is Pork Chops and Applesauce. Have you ever heard anyone make the comment that kids are maturing faster these days? Of course, if this were true, the question would be why. Kara and I were talking the other night, and she shared a conversation she had earlier that day that left her frustrated. It seems that the friends that she was talking to made the comment that kids were maturing faster and it was all because of the hormones in meat. Now, Kara knew that this friend wasn't getting the complete picture. She tried to share her knowledge on the subject and became frustrated at her friend's inability to hear anything that she was saying. I decided to dig into the subject to see if there was real justification for this collective conclusion. Medical research over the last 20 years has shed a brighter light on the subject, leading the medical community to now believe the cause of early maturity is due to better and more complete childhood nutrition. If you walk the grocery aisle or listen to food and restaurant commercials, you read and hear the tagline, "No hormones added, steroid-free," insinuating other similar products without such wording do have added hormones and steroids. Now, I did a survey of 3 friends asking them if chickens today were stuffed with hormones and steroids. Not only did all 3 say yes, but 2 out of the 3 said that's why chicken breasts were so big. Well, my research had taught me there were no added hormones in chickens. And steroids are hormones, none of them either. When I told my friend that there were absolutely no poultry products available to the consumer that contain added hormones or steroids, they looked at me like I had 2 heads. They were so convinced they were right, I had to take them to the FDA's website to show them that it's illegal to use hormones to raise poultry. I then showed them the USDA's regulation on poultry labeling. Hormones are not allowed in raising poultry. This is Christopher Knight for Pork Chops and Applesauce.
Now, here's my Uncle Chris and his thoughts from inside the great world of agriculture.
Hi, I'm Christopher Knight, and welcome to Pork Chops and Applesauce. Grass-fed beef seems to be a trendy rage in restaurants and supermarkets all over Southern California. Well, I hadn't tasted it until recently when I found myself at a very nice, very pricey restaurant for a business dinner where they serve both grass-fed and grain-fed beef. Now, I decided to give the grass-fed beef a try, and it was good. But after all the buildup and the steep price premium over grain-fed steak, I was expecting something palate-expanding. As far as I was concerned, on taste alone, it wasn't worth it. Taste alone, therefore, can't be the reason grass-fed beef is trending. It must be because of the other benefits. So is grass-fed beef healthier? Is it truly better for the environment? I set about learning more about grass-fed beef. The first thing I discovered is that all cattle are grass-fed a good portion of their lives. All cattle eat grass until they get to be about 700 pounds. After that, grain-fed cattle are put on an energy-dense corn or grain-based diet fortified with vitamins, minerals, and trace nutrients as determined and regulated by the farm's large animal veterinarian. A Washington State University study from 2012 said that beef produced on grain produces over a third less greenhouse gas emissions than grass-fed beef. Because grain is more easily digestible, cattle-fed grain produce less methane. In addition, grain-fed cattle reach market weight more quickly, thus using far less water and other natural resources. Ultimately, grass-fed beef isn't the superior product it's made out to be or that its price may suggest. It's not significantly better for me. It's less efficient to produce, uses more resources, is arguably worse for the environment, demands more land area, more deforestation, more habitat destruction, and is significantly more expensive. As an enthusiastic and discriminating consumer of beef, as long as grain-fed cattle are treated humanely, I'm going to stick with grain-fed beef.